Hello, everyone. Welcome to reInvent. Hope you're learning a lot from this year's virtual sessions going on. My name is Sibu Kari. I'm a worldwide tech leader for enterprise migrations and modernizations. In my role, I work closely with enterprises like Aramex, whom you would hear from later on their digital transformation journey and how modernization is helping in true business transformations. So today we're going to talk about obviously moving to the cloud, but more importantly, how moving to the cloud can help you transform the business and how to get rid of that age old technical debt. So I'll be joined by Mohammed Sleek, Chief Digital Officer at Aramex, and how he is doing it at his organization, both migrating, modernizing, and transforming at the same time. Today's talk, we'll hear about how to migrate, obviously, but also some patterns and best practices along the way. And I'll leave you with a couple of ideas on how you can start your transformation journey. So the real question is why? Why migrate? Why evolve? Why modernize? A few years ago, I think several years ago, there was this interesting paper out that was pretty famous in the IT circles that IT does not matter. The premise was that the all the businesses have ERPs or supply chains or payrolls or backend infrastructure that is IT enabled, and IT has become another commodity like electricity or power. We have come long ways from that, though. Right? We know that for sure that technology is driving innovation and growth, and not only driving innovation and growth, but it's also a key portion of resiliency, which we have especially seen this year. So it is pretty clear that technology is driving innovation and growth. To be more clear, consider some of these statistics. Right, the average lifespan of an S&P company is down to 15 years. 9 out of 10 companies believe that they are going to be disrupted digitally in their business. I've seen numerous examples of working with different customers on direct codes and direct customer situations where it is really happening. In spite of all this, I want to call attention to the fact that two-thirds of IT spend is still on KTLO, keeping the lights on, as we call it. So it's obvious that the business and the customer and the market expects you to evolve, adapt, move fast, but still your lights on with your technology spend is still focused on lights on. How do you shift your technology spend two-thirds on your lights on business to providing actual business capabilities? If you look at the technology landscape, it has been largely level playing field now. The startups have access to the same infrastructure as only a cash-rich enterprises had in the last few years. So the digital disruption is real. So we really need to modernize your technology in order to adapt to the business. So having said that, how do we do that, right? How do we go from your legacy data center technology stack to a more modern digital agile technology that can really help you move the business needle? So what I want to talk to you about is how to modernize your IT landscape in a very simple business technology lens or framework. You've probably seen other frameworks like 6Rs and a lot of migration strategies and modernization frameworks. But I do want to call upon a pretty simple way to look at it on how to approach it from a pure business technology angle. You can launch your cloud transformation journey by migrating about 50% of your workloads. And this is proven data that we have seen across thousands of migrations that you've seen. Based on your technology stack, about 50% of applications can be moved as is without any change to the application itself. Now, obviously, this will give you out of the gate a lower TCO, improved resiliency, improved operations cost, enhanced security posture, and a bunch of different benefits like that. But then also to consider some of the other horizontal business applications like your CRM systems or your payroll systems, which you could move to SaaS in this particular bucket. So by quickly moving to AWS are quickly moving to a SaaS platform, some of your non-differentiating applications, you're almost transforming about 50-60% of your IT landscape right away. The next important step which you have to do is in parallel is the advanced notion or the advanced degree where you are actually transforming, you're re-architecting your core business applications. I call this the core revival. This is not your bread and butter application. This is your key revenue generating business applications. Now, you'll hear later on from Sleek about how Aramex is doing all three in parallel, but when I was engaged there, we did all three at the same time. We moved a bunch of applications as is. Then we focused on some key applications, which is like the tracking application, which had to be rewritten to meet the demands of the consumer or the B2C customer. So the core revival is pretty important. And at the third time, Excel is really important too, is about leveraging cloud technologies like machine learning, like IoT, like artificial intelligence, to really build up new capabilities. This is about technology driving the business, not the other way around. A more common question that we get is migrate or modernize, or migrate and then modernize. I would say you have to do all at the same time. You have to be ambidextrous, right? You have to do everything at the same time. There is no migrate and modernize. For some people, for some enterprises, moving away from aging hardware and legacy data center itself is a modernization. You're getting resiliency, you're getting improved operations right out of the gate, improved downtime, improved uptime rather, right out of the gate. But in some cases, you're already running at a pretty efficient data center or pretty efficient colo or pretty efficient cloud. But then your application needs to be modernized. It's about moving up the stack there. But in almost all the cases, modernization also means that you have to invest in building new technology capabilities that can drive these businesses. So the question really is, you have to do all three in parallel? Yes. Is it hard? No. Is it easy? No. Is it yet to be done? Yes, because the data clearly shows that if you don't do this, it is really bad for your business. Think about the statistics told earlier about S&P Life and digital disruption. So it's really about changing your technology landscape and changing your IT strategy to move aligned with what business is calling for these days. So let's dive deep into a few of these degrees. When you launch, as a pattern, what you've seen is about 50% of the applications can be moved as is. You can also move some of the key components like your load balancer to ELP, your DNS to Route 53. This gives you immediate benefits like global scale, fault tolerance, multi-AZ, multi-region, lower cost of operations by on-demand pricing, a bunch of those key values that the cloud can provide, with minimal disruption to existing systems. The theme here is no change. The focus here is to IT administrators or systems or infrastructure people. And the best practice here is you still have to kind of figure out the applications because the application itself is not changing, but the application delivery models are changing. So you need to start thinking about DevOps and start thinking about some of those delivery options here. The goal here is to kind of really get started with the cloud, flex your cloud muscles, get familiar with the process. At the same time, get really good benefits out of the gate. So go into the next degree, which is advanced. I call it advanced, or I call it core revival. The theme here is change the system, right? And don't just change the system, reimagine the system from ground up, which is why I call it the best practice. So as a pattern, when you look at existing applications, these are core business applications, which is revenue generating top line applications. We see that many of them are legacy, but we also see that about 40-45% of the code is redundant here, which means they are representing outdated workflows or outdated business roles, etc. So we need to kind of make sure that when you rewrite these applications, you think about this differently. Because underlying constructs of application architecture, like your business entities, your data flows, your integrations, your consistency models, your data schemas, the constraints that you had previously, like only one RDBMS or different tiers of storage, all that has changed. The SLA is available to you. So why wouldn't you take advantage of all that and architect it differently here? which is what we call the best practice of reimagining the applications. Be bold in your reimagination. Again, I was fortunate to work on the Aramex journey here. Sleek will talk about it later, about how some of the tracking applications being completely modernized and reimagined to most modern architectures to take advantage of the flexibility. You will get all the advantages of the launch degree, but you'll also get additional benefits into lower operational cost and higher performance and scalability and more agility for that matter. So again, the best practices here is, even though the focus here is application owners and developers, you should also set equal and aggressive goals for the operations to move from manual operations to automated operations to no operations. Because again, the goal, if you go back, is to take your spend from 2/3 into KTLO, like keeping the lights on, to free focus on your applications and the capability development areas. Which is why the next degree is even more important to start upfront, which is the Excel, I call it, which is really about using technology to drive the business. The theme here is change the thinking. So if you look at the 3 degrees of 1, 2, 3, no change, move access existing systems, very minimal risk. Change the system, because to adapt to the technology needs, you need to change your key business applications. And the third one is really change the thinking. How can technology drive the business further? And this what most of these is about taking advantage of things like machine learning or AI or IoT, some of the new capabilities out there. And there's a dependency usually on existing data. So the launch and advanced phases would really help in this Excel. And many enterprises get started in this early on by building a data lake, moving all your data into a data lake so you can start building some new models out there, which is exactly what, again, Aramex have done. So in these 3 phases, it's pretty easy to get started on the first journey. There are discovery tools that will give you prescriptive approaches within a few weeks. There are non-intrusive tools out there. For the second phase, you would get some intrusive tools that can give you which code to refactor, what line of code to change. And the third one, again, it's about moving your data and starting about redeveloping your business capabilities using new technologies. So why do all this? Again, we kind of talked about some stats earlier. I want to call your attention to one particular one by getting what kind of business value you get by migrating to AWS. 62% more efficient IT infrastructure. That is money, that's real money that you can divert from your KTLO, the 2/3, to actual business capability development. So how do you get started? Right? Best practices to get started. Again, you have heard the tech readiness angle and discussions. There is two axes for this, right? One is the tech readiness angle, about looking at from bottom up. How is my tech estate looking like? How is my IT landscape? How is my portfolio looking like from a pure tech stack perspective? Which ones are ready? Which ones are not ready? What are the dependencies of your applications? Which database is the most heavy? Where is the gravity of data? All that kind of tech parameters that you would look at it. The other really is from a top-down perspective and a business perspective. What should you do? And that's where this kind of thing comes in. Jeffrey Moore talks about the core versus context. Commodity applications are your context. So these are non-differentiating applications. Core is very compete on, like Amazon.com for Amazon, or for Netflix, it's the recommendation engine. This is the key top-line revenue-generating applications where you should really invest on. And as a pattern, from what we have seen across different migrations and modernization journeys, we're taking a stab at recategorizing the core versus context into the migration pattern here, and what you would typically apply in some of these instances about rehost, refactor, where you would apply the patterns here. Again, this is patterns that you derive from many migrations and transformations. Your mileage would vary depending on your tech readiness of your current IT landscape. The question really then becomes, how do you, back to the question, migrate or modernize, kind of go back to the same answer. You have to do both at the same time, right? It's not about one or the other. And again, the best practice really is some of the modernization initiatives. It's really better if you migrate and then modernize, because modernization itself, if there's changing the code or changing the application architecture, is much easier and faster to do on the cloud rather than trying to do it off the cloud. Because every ounce of energy you spend off the cloud is energy taken away from driving business capabilities and innovations. So to talk about more about how the core versus context, how the mission critical and non-mission critical applications, how all 3 degrees of modernization was successfully used in their enterprise, with whom I had a pleasure of working with them earlier this year, I handing over to Mohammed Sleek to talk about their enterprise transformation journey. Over to you, Sleek.
Thank you, Sibu. Again, my name is Mohammed Sleek. I am the Chief Digital Officer at Aramex. To give you a little bit of a background about Aramex, we are a comprehensive logistics and a transportation solutions provider. We operate in around 65 countries around the world, and we have 15,000 employees globally. And again, some statistics about the organization. We've delivered around 100 million shipments last year to almost 37 unique consumers, unique customers. And if you look at this distribution of the profile of customers that we serve today, it's the majority of that business is delivered to e-commerce customers, to online shoppers. Effectively, the organization have grown into and become an e-commerce fulfillment organization compared to our customer database when we were primarily focused on B2B, which really, and the whole thing was fueled by the growth of the e-commerce in the region where we operate, where we have the biggest last mile infrastructure, which really changed the very fundamentals of the traditional supply chain. And when we used to compete with the traditional operators, today we are competing with a new breed of competition that fulfills e-commerce business into the region. So in order for us to really transform and meet the demands of the shifting demands of our customers today, we kicked off a large enterprise transformation program in multiple areas of the business, including the customer experience, the digitization of the customer engagement experience, and the next generation of how we want to engage with our customers, which really represents 40-50% of what we do today in this program. Last mile innovation and last mile transformation, we wanted to embed AI and machine learning in a lot of the autonomous last mile control we want to achieve in our last mile, specifically with the margin crunch that we're seeing or the industry is witnessing today. Big data analytics is a big thing for us. And the journey with AWS actually started with creating one of the biggest data lakes in the region. We are sitting on large amounts of data around transportation and consumer buyer trends, not only about addresses and last mile preferences and so on, but there's a lot of data that we can generate from our business in order to benefit and improve customer experience and improve the last mile processes. Digital products, again, this is all about crowdsourcing, delivering tech-driven, zero-asset products led by modern application teams and expanding the footprint that we have on the cloud to leverage these modern applications and the cloud-native architecture and obviously meet the demands of and the scalability of the business because e-commerce is a highly volatile and agile business model. And of course, the core modernization, which is again one of the most painful areas. And a lot of companies are scrambling to digitize their core landscape from an IT perspective. And obviously the whole thing will be supported by the cloud native applications that we want to move on to the cloud. And again, for us, cloud is the biggest disruption. We talk about digital disruption across the industry, but in my view, cloud is the biggest disruption in our industry. All of a sudden, we saw ourselves competing with digital operators that are by far more nimble and agile. And of course, we had to do a big shift and a big change in our strategy from a digital standpoint. So this is a very high level enterprise architecture to our business support applications. If you look at the bottom layer, we would have your traditional business support applications, finance, HR, procurement, and all of these components. You would have the middle tier of applications that support the core business, the operational systems, the track and trace systems, and the millions and millions of records that are generated from a tracking events perspective. Because again, tracking capabilities and event streaming and live tracking capabilities is very important to augment our customer experience, and this whole architecture is built on these core applications. And of course, the customer interfacing platforms of what we call the digital experience that we're trying to build with our own customers. And historically, we've religiously built most of our applications in-house and on-premise. So we had to look at the best way possible to re-architect our solutions and to modernize these applications using AWS components and leveraging the capabilities of the cloud platforms that is offered by AWS. So if you look at the mission critical systems, and here the question was build versus buy, right? SaaS solutions versus re-architecting and rebuilding your applications. So in some instances within these core applications, we decided to obviously build our own or come up with third-party solutions, freight forwarding products, for example, or warehouse management components that are vetted, SaaS solutions that we can actually onboard using third-party systems. But then when we talk about the core and the mission-critical systems or the niche products that we have, we decided to protect our proprietary tech and modernize and re-architect the whole solution on the cloud, leveraging the cloud-native applications and the cloud-native technologies. Of course, because we consider this as a niche product, we had multiple debates on whether we need to do a lift and shift versus a full re-architecture of the solution, which we've chosen the harder path because these are applications that are niche, because we've always been looked at as a flexible operator that meets the customer demands, and the whole solution is actually evolving to meet the new trends in the transportation industry, specifically when we talk about e-commerce, scheduling engines, customer experiences, and all of these components that are critical for the business. Customer interfacing platforms, of course, will continue to drive modernization in the same way, but again, we will be hosting these applications on the cloud. This is the target enterprise or the future state, very high level again. So we're looking at modernizing the digital core represented in red by, again, onboarding fresher applications, newer applications, whether on the cloud or on SaaS applications that are available in the market. The whole thing is really wrapped by a big data component or a big data lake that is powering a lot of the machine learning capabilities that we're trying to build. And we're trying to modernize this whole functionality to add value to our customers and to our consumers from a customer experience standpoint, or even from an efficiency, and take away a lot of the manually intensive processes that we have on the ground by powering these core applications with big data and machine learning loads that are extremely important for us to modernize the whole thing. And of course, the whole thing will be wrapped with a digital experience that again, we power the communication with our customers. So this is the target architecture on a very high level. And in fact, the whole journey with AWS started with creating this big data lake, and then we expanded the footprint. And I can tell you, we're operating a hybrid environment today, but we have a very aggressive plan to modernize our core operating systems onto the cloud in the next year or so. So the journey started with establishing the big data lake. This is something that is running today. We have around 5 use cases running on the cloud, and again 100 machine learning models that are running today. We have almost, I would say, 1 million predictions made every day. In peak seasons, it can go to up to 4 million predictions on these machine learning models. But we've taken a further step to evaluate the whole landscape, and we looked at a model and we partnered up with AWS to come up with a migration readiness planning or an assessment plan to look at our applications, to decide on the landing zones, to decide on the technology choices that are available on the cloud that can modernize our applications, and we decided upon them. We hired an implementation partner that is currently working on the first mover of what we call our info access solution, which is again one of the main components of our express product that includes domestic deliveries and international cross-border, including the e-commerce business. So we're looking at the modernization readiness program assessment and the plan. We've completed that. And now we are in the first stages of the implementation of the first mover of the applications. So we identified 61 applications that needs to be modernized, and we're in the final phases of the testing of the first application, or the first mover. And the minute we are done, most of these applications and the 61 applications will be re-architected and quickly moving onto the cloud infrastructure. So we're currently in the phase of deciding on the future state architecture. This has already been vetted, and again, we are in the final stages of moving the tracking application, which is the first elements of our architecture. So again, the whole architecture of the solution is recommended obviously by AWS, leveraging some of the microservices architecture, which again achieves agility and business continuity and sustainability for the business. And scalability for us is the biggest problem, specifically when you consider the growth in the e-commerce business that we're seeing today. So we need to be able to address the scalability of the industry to make sure that we meet the future demands of the business by looking at a cloud scalable infrastructure that can help the organization grow because we have aggressive targets. For us, again, cloud is not about cost and efficiency, although we're expecting a huge business case to reduce the total cost of ownership of our IT infrastructure. But for us, cloud is about innovation and growth, and this is how the whole journey started. So back to you, Sibu.
So I just want to leave you with some ideas on how to get started. How can you get started on your transformation journey? You know, Andy Jassy says there's no compression algorithm for experience. So start early. The more you wait, the harder it becomes, right? And truly use the cloud as a catalyst. So if you look at the degrees that we talked about earlier, launch, advance in Excel, launch first. Use that as a catalyst to change. Bring some business value in terms of lower TCO or improved operational resiliency or improved performance or improved availability or global scale, get new markets. And then that to drive actual business transformation. It's not that business drives technology anymore. It's about how technology can drive the business, right? It's about how migrating to the cloud can be transforming your business, can be fundamental for transforming your business. Again, the question really is not what the cloud can do for you. It's what you can do with the cloud. Good luck with your transformations. Thank you.